Welcome back to Answering the Call 2020, a virtual public safety summit for the Arbinger Institute. This session is Empowering Community Engagement, and we were joined by three panelists, Phyllis Ritchie, Melinda Ricketts, and Chato Villalobos. Desmond, I facilitated this panel, and you did not. It's the only one of these panels that you weren't able to do. Why couldn't you do it?
I was facilitating that day. I was working with an organization on the East Coast, and we had a wonderful 2-day facilitation. So thank you for taking over, Sarah. I'm sure you rocked it.
And Desmond has another session coming up October 14th and 15th, specifically for public safety, and we'll tell you more about that later. I was very fortunate to be able to have this amazing conversation with our panelists today. Our panelists included Chato Villalobos from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, where he is a Westside CAN Center police officer. I'm also joined by Phyllis Ritchie and Melinda Ricketts, both from a Cut Above the Rest training facility. And for all of these panelists today, they have an amazing story, and I would like them to introduce themselves in their own words. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'd like to start, if we could, with everybody doing a little introduction of themselves. Tell us your name and what your work is, how you've engaged in this cause of empowering individual contribution within your communities. Melinda, if you'd take a second, introduce yourself. We're going to start with you. Give us your name and talk a little about the role that you play in this particular arena.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melinda Ricketts. I am the owner of a Cut Above the Rest training facility. We are located in Alabama with over 5 locations. We work closely with the police departments throughout the state and also the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Parole. When people are released from prison, they come through our training facility in order for them to make a living when they get out. So we teach them usable job skills. And we opened our doors in 2014 in December with our first class of 3 students. And it has grown to well over 600 students in the past 6 years. And our recidivism rate is 3% and 85% employment rate.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Ritchie. I work with the Cut Above the Rest training facility. It has been a true blessing to be a part of this organization and watch the development as people come from a hopeless state, watch their character change, their self-esteem starts to develop, and you can see the change as they get accustomed to society and just begin a life. And it's a wonderful thing. I'm blessed to be a part of it.
My name is Chato Villalobos. I am a 20-year veteran with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. My current assignment is a community police officer assigned to the Westside community here in Kansas City. I've been doing that for about the last 14 years, and our primary goal is just to be partners with the community, help out in any which way we can, identify problems, do problem solving, and just anything that we can do to be a partner in making this community a wonderful community to live in, work in, play in. So it's been quite an adventure and a life calling for sure.
Now, everybody on this panel today has some, maybe you'd call it an origin story or a source, a reason that they've kind of got into the work they've gone into, where that passion comes from or where that dedication comes from. Maybe the point at which they started seeing others as truly as people and communities truly as a resource that can help support that group or those individuals to make a meaningful contribution and strengthen those communities. Chato, tell me a little bit about exactly what your organization does and how you came to be a part of it.
And I'm in a unique situation where I got assigned to a place, the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I remember it being a neighborhood of high crime and distress. So going through that experience was really somewhere where the roots were planted for me and wanted to do something better for my community. But all that didn't get uncovered and unwrapped until I actually went from being a police officer who believed that law enforcement, writing tickets and putting people in jail was a way to validate your hard work. You had something that you can measure through, you were able to document that how many tickets you wrote. It wasn't until I came to this position that I realized just how many lives you were able to change by helping people. When you go to a situation and just assess a situation, help those people get plugged into resources that are, whether within the neighborhood or external resources within that family, or just to see the people as people and not just stats. I really had my own paradigm shift, and I was lucky that there was a veteran officer here before me that went through the same process of seeing this as an opportunity to do good by people and really help them, end these cycles of trauma, cycles of, crisis that they were experiencing. And it went from being a community where they just accepted that they were a high crime, low functioning community, to now that they were able to identify and strengthen with themselves because we were a partner in that. So yeah, the passion was definitely, I had to unwrap it and find it again to remember that kid that grew up in this community and what we wanted for our families, and marrying those two together and having this opportunity as a police officer now. This has been a true adventure for me, and an awakening. When I thought I was already a veteran police officer and knew what it was to what defined a good police officer was.
I love that. I think you really are in such a unique position, having done the one and gone into the other, which feel like they're totally divided, but really you've seen how you can move from one into the other. You didn't just lose all of your faith in humanity kind of forever, but have really had a transformation. And I think that's pretty remarkable. About Cut Above the Rest, tell me, Melinda, let's start with you. Tell me about, how did you get into this? Where does your love for this project come from? How did you get involved?
I got involved because I am an ex-felon. I served 2 years in the state of Alabama penitentiary, and when I was released in 2010, there is really no resources for ex-felons when they get out of prison. And for someone, not so much me, but someone who served a lot of time, it is a shock. Some people get out and they've never seen, and I say this all the time, they've never seen a toilet that flushes by itself. It scares them. They've never seen a faucet that comes on when you put your hand in front of it. They don't know how to work a cell phone, and they surely don't know how to work a computer. These people are lost when they get out of prison, and especially if they don't have a family member there to help them. And I would say half the people that are getting out don't have the support of family, and they surely do not have the support of the community. And that's where we have to step in and step up.
Where did this passion come from, and how did you get involved in Cut Above the Rest?
I'm gonna take you back a little bit. I came from a life of violence. When the streets are safer than your home, then something's definitely wrong. I got my life together and I got a degree and I went to college and I got married and I had 2 beautiful children. In 1997, I went through a really bad divorce. I was heartbroken. I couldn't get myself back together. I started drinking real heavily, using. I was lost. And in 1998, May the 14th, actually, I was headed to a cookout. And I hit a car head on. No brakes were applied on either car. It was 110 mile an hour impact. It killed the other 2 people, and that was in the other vehicle. And I was fighting for my life in the hospital for weeks. When I made it through that, At that point, my whole life had changed. I was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, and I was sentenced to 2 lives. So the next 20 years, I lived in the state penitentiary. So I met a lady inside. Her name was Juanita Pitts. We became good friends. While inside, we talked about what we could do when we got out. She ended up getting out 7 years before I did. Every time I'd come up for parole, they'd set me off another 5. But me and this lady talked about doing something for others when we got out, and she did. Her family had been in the construction business for years. So when she got out, she put together a program of construction and heavy equipment operations. So my 4th time coming up for parole, she showed up to go to my parole hearing. And she told them that not only did she want me to go through her program, but she wanted me to work for her when I got out. They wanted to know why she thought so highly of me. Did she really think that much of me? And she said, yes, I do. I've watched her for years. And she said, you'll never have to worry about her return. And before she could sit down, they made a decision and I was granted parole. That was October the 22nd, 2018, 20 years later. When I walked out that back gate, I wanted to turn around and walk back in. I had no idea what to do out there. The world had not stopped. It had kept going. But when I got out, I went straight to work with the Cut Above the Rest, went through my 8 weeks of training, and they gave me the job in Birmingham. So I have really enjoyed my job. I love helping people, and it just, it's been a blessing.
That's a remarkable story. So as Melinda said, that for Juanita and yourself, that there was a real sense that people you were with inside really were your family. And there was a strong sense of, I want to help my family out. I want to take care of them. I want to help them transition. I want to give them the support that I had or that I needed in some cases. How do you respond to that?
When you walk out that back gate, you're leaving the family you've known for 2 decades. The people that's helped you, been there when you got news from home, when you lost your parents, your sisters, they were there. It's very hard. When you get out, all you can think about is trying to get them out, trying to get help for them. And then when some of them do get out, you know the ones that you have to let go of. You see the path they're traveling. They're just not ready. Some of them go back again. And some go back because that's what they know. So that's what we're trying to stop, the recidivism of going back inside, of making and developing a family out here for them where they can, have a great self-esteem and be proud of who they are.
There's so many parallels to the philosophical approach that we take to, what you hear Melinda talking about and what they do, their organization. And I see a lot of common denominators, like how you look at people and how you see their potential, and not just whatever at-risk indicators that they are living or that they have identified in their lives. Like, those things don't necessarily define us as human beings. It's the resiliency within those people who live in crisis, or who are disconnected, or who just are unaware of the resources available. A lot of the success that comes out of the CAN Center is something that we discovered is when we go to a call, it may involve, let's use domestic violence as an example. If we walk in there and just treat it as like, okay, what is the protocol? We take the report, then that's it, and we go to the next call. well, then we've really failed that family and that community, because what we've learned to do as police officers that have the freedom to do the proactive work and not just go to the call and then answer the next call is we get to do a full assessment of this family. What led the abuser, for example, the person who committed the act of abuse to that point? And if we don't do a true assessment of the people and what they're going through, we can't really be a resource to them. So what we started to do at the CAN Center is we first had to become field subject experts of the internal resources within those communities. That means like your non-for-profits that deal with social services. So when we ourselves took it upon ourselves to go and be the field subject experts of the available resources, then at that time when we go to a house who is in some form of crisis, then we could look at that person who committed the act and be like, this moment does not define you. And although we are going to set the expectation up here, we're also going to help you identify the resources to get to that, to meet that expectation, so that whatever dreams you have for yourself and your family as a member of that family, that can be obtained. And just because we do live in communities that have all these at-risk indicators, whether it's high crime or poverty, those things do not define you, and we could still help you meet that dream of giving your child a good life or being an example to your child, regardless of what's happened to you in your life. And we see with some of the people that we're talking to in this discussion, there's a lot of parallels in that some people took their own adversity and was able to channel that. And I think that's what helps us to have more empathy. And I get just so motivated and I get so inspired because you don't have to go through it to be there for them. And the fact that somebody like her who's been through it and has all that adversity that she's faced, that tells me as a police officer, I would never have gone through what Melinda has gone through. But the fact that I treat people the way they are, that I know that Melinda's work is not in vain if the people that she gets them connected to can do the same as she does. And she could be the example that if we just give people a shot and see them for their potential, instead of just somebody who committed this violation or this crime or whatever, that we could really do our communities and our society a lot better. So that's what we, on a day-to-day, we go out and we gather food from places and we set up these things so we're able to deliver food to folks. And the global pandemic, a lot of what we've established as a foundation has really helped us succeed during this time because people need us now more than ever, and we're able to work with other people and identify resources. We know how to do that. We know how to, like, people who've lost their jobs because of the pandemic, we know where to find those job placement coordinators or find those grants to help people pay those utility bills. And so in doing all these things that have nothing to do with policing and enforcing the law, when something does happen in his neighborhood, it's not a crime-free community by any means, but when something does happen, we're able to get to the bottom of things a lot faster. It's mainly that philosophical approach to things. We take that approach in whatever good we try to do, and it's reciprocated. And instead of being an occupying force in a community, we're partners with them.
When you were talking about the people in the domestic violence or whatever situation you had to go there in, and you said, we want to find out what's going on. What happened to you? Are you an addict? Do you have mental health issues? Are you in poverty? See, what happened to them goes way back, further than at that moment. Where is your pain coming from? Where's your struggle? And you see that, and I admire that in you. But you are able to recognize that. Not every officer does. There's some that can look at you and never see you. They look at my number. Hello, my name is 203-536. But you can call me Phyllis.
And the problem with those officers that we talk about, like that you said, and how they treat people is the majority of that we create as institutions. And my confession to you is I was that officer chasing my own pride and trying to validate my work ethic. I was proud of how many tickets I wrote and how many people I took to jail and how many warrants I arrested folks. I didn't care how they got there or whatever. I was able to say, look how hard I worked. How many people did you arrest? And that's a dangerous culture, because a lot of cops are like, well, I'm a hard worker. I'll show you I'm a team player. Not even thinking about how we're affecting those communities. That we start to institutionalize a lot of folks because of what we have defined as making places safer. These are we're writing tickets because it makes people slow down, or we're arresting people at warrants because that's how you pay for the price for the crime that you committed, and that should make you a better person for that. But what saved my life as a police officer and as a human being, I think, was that I can't even blame my department. There's no way to teach somebody empathy, but there's a way that we can create opportunities. When we're given those opportunities, is to really focus on how do we help somebody, how do we problem solve issues. Let's use a lot of our energy, and before we reach for those handcuffs or before we reach for that gun, have we really exhausted all of our training and all of our available resources? And there's been we get a lot of flack for doing that. Well, they're not real cops because they don't arrest anybody. I was like, well, you could look up our homicide clearance rate compared to the rest of the city. We were able to lower crime 65% just in the first year of treating people like people. We have some police departments who can't afford those kind of trainings, who can't be as diverse as we are, as far as all the different types of officers we have, that some of them are specific to community-based policing. So how do we overcome that challenge as a nation, as an occupation, as a profession? How do we teach them that words like empathy and compassion are synonymous with courage and bravery? Where it takes courage to show empathy, to exhibit empathy towards somebody. It takes courage to exhibit compassion, to figure out another way to deal with this issue and to understand where that person's at. So the work here is like, we've got to remind ourselves, constantly, and people in these positions of influence and power and authority, that we are a lot more successful when we enter all these interactions as partners and not just an occupying force, that we are guardians, working for them, even the person in crisis, whatever it may be. And it just really softens it when we do have to use the criminal justice system to address the issue.
I imagine you've all had some pretty cool success stories. So I'd like to hear some success stories, or some. Do you have a moment that feels like I knew I was doing the right thing, or I knew, or we knew that we were really making a difference in the lives of the people we work with and the communities they live in?
One of the instances that comes to mind is during graduation at headquarters in Montgomery. We had probably 12 students graduating with their hard hats on and their vests, and they invited their families there. And one gentleman had his great grandmother there, and his mom and dad are not in the picture, but his grandmother and great grandmother are. That's who raised him. And we allow each of the students to talk if they want to after they receive their certificate. And he looked at his grandma and great grandma, and he started crying. And he held his certificate up, and he said, "This is the first thing I have ever accomplished in my life." And now he is working, I believe, in South Carolina now on a pipeline, and he's making over $30 an hour. And he'll call and text every once in a while and just tell me how he's doing.
I had this officer who worked the night. He's like, hey, we're arresting this guy like almost every night. He's always drunk. He's always urinated himself. He won't go away. We told him he needs to get off the boulevard, go home, whatever. But like, I think I've taken him to jail like 7 times. I'm like, well, what's his name? What does he look like? So, guy's name is Jesse. So I finally get the phone call, and I'm driving around, and I see him down, and sure enough, he's passed out. So I get him up, and he's like, "Oh, time to go to jail." I'm like, "No, we're not going to jail, Jesse. I'm giving you a ride home." He was like, "Oh, nobody gives me a ride home." I was like, "Well, I'm gonna give you a ride home, and then we're gonna get you out of his clothes, and you're gonna take a nap, and then when you wake up, you're gonna call me, and we're gonna get you some help." And I leave him my phone number. He doesn't call me, but I show up to his house, and he's out there and he's already starting to pour himself another one to get him back on. And I was like, no, man, we got an appointment, bud. We got to go. And I located, the neighborhood substance abuse counselors, and they're going to work with him. And so the next day, I go to his house, make the guy breakfast, and he doesn't drink that day. He doesn't come down. I was like, I'm going to come here tomorrow. We got to go to our second meeting. He's like, you're going with me? I was like, yeah, man, I believe in you. We can do this, And one day he was like, hey, I want to start a group with these guys down here that hang out on the boulevard. They used to come and arrest us, but I think I can help them out. So he started an AA group down here, and we let him use the Can Center on Wednesday nights. It was anonymous. So the police officers, we were gone by 5 o'clock. That was the deal. We had to be out of the building so they could have their meetings. But he did a super job. He ended up becoming sober. And I'll never forget, I mean, he passed away shortly after. But he made an impact on my life because we got a lot of credit for cleaning up the neighborhood, and he did all the work. He started to do the outreach. He's the one that got after those guys. He went down there and he was one of them. He was one of them, and they saw that the Can Center is at a place where the cops could leave now, and people have just gotten so used to the culture where we're all in this together that they don't need us here to keep this thing going, of helping people and identifying resources and just being advocates for folks who are in distress. And that's what I want. I don't want to exist and just keep coming up with reasons so that I can have a job. It's work our way out of this.
So with programs like these, I think there's maybe a misconception, or maybe you can clear that up, is that this sort of connection and assistance and contribution and engagement maybe comes off, at least initially, as a handout, or as giving something that isn't going to be effectively used, or maybe it's just throwing money or resources at a problem that isn't making a difference. How is what you do different?
There is a deficiency in workers within the construction industry. And we're only providing a small number of what that deficit is. But the people we do provide are the ones that want to work. They want to earn an honest living. We're not handing them anything. They are earning it. This is not an easy class. So the ones that think that this is an easy, just put them in the air condition and just give them a certificate, that's not what we do. They have to earn it. So when they stand up there and they are provided their certificate at graduation, they have tears in their eyes because they have accomplished something in their life they've never done before. And when they call you up and they say, Miss Ricketts, I got a job. Thank you so much. That is what we give them. We give them self-esteem. They hold their head up a little bit higher. We don't give them anything. They earn it.
How do you respond to any pushback you get that what your program is or what you do is a handout?
We run a Can Center where day laborers get to come down and look for work. So we did an outreach with them. And what we did to those guys, like, you can come and use our showers and our bathrooms in our office. In turn, you guys have this relationship with us, and you let us know what's going on down here, and we're going to solve this issue together in partnership. And it took a while for them to trust us, but the more one would come in and out of the office, they started to see us as guys just like them. We started to see them as people trying to feed their families. They started helping us, and we went from there to identifying elderly people who were getting tickets from the city inspectors. Like, hey, the paint is peeling off your porch, or your grass is too tall, and people are calling and complaining on you. So these guys would volunteer and go mow the lawns and cut down the shrubs. And so when you started to see the community react towards these guys, like, hey, they used to be just the guys that hung out on a corner. Now they're the ones mowing the lawns for the elderly, or helping us harvest the fruits and vegetables that we grow at the garden. And they're volunteering to cut the lawn of Miss Gonzalez, who doesn't have any grandchildren, to help her with her house so she doesn't get tickets and coded at her house. So these men were able to maintain their dignity while they're still homeless, some of them, and they're still looking for work. They're still battling addiction, but they still felt this obligation to volunteer and set up the back to school drives, all the tables and chairs and the things that need to be set up. I mean, these guys just were like, hey, they're always like, what's going on? Is there any way that we can help? We have all these amazing things happen organically because we were able to be catalysts in creating those opportunities.
How can the everyday average civic official or law enforcement officer participate and help encourage and empower meaningful contribution if they don't have a program like you guys have? How can they start? What sort of efforts can they make in that direction?
The design of the Westside Cancer Center is not where the success comes from. I think again it's the philosophical approach to how we police. And sometimes we think we need to create a new program where if we just go grassroots and include, I think, the stakeholders who these things are affecting, and we really come up with a plan. What's protected the Cancer Center is that we've been able to say, although we are the experts in law enforcement, you are the experts of your communities. We work for you. We want to work with you. We don't want to come down here and fix anything. And if there's no trust, then it's going to take us a lot longer to fix it, and we may mess it up sometimes. But if we work really hard on gaining that trust of the people we're supposed to serve, then they will work with us, and we will be a lot more successful, I think.
What do you think about that Phyllis? How can the everyday civic leader or officer begin to contribute and to empower others to meaningfully contribute in their communities?
You know, there are so many ways to contribute to the community, not just in construction, but other things. If you are in the field and have a restaurant, offer people jobs, teach them how to work as a chef, train these people, help them get a job, get them back into society. You can contribute so much of your job, your business, or just you individual. Volunteer to go work and help. There's so many in need. And I see there's so much opportunity out here. I wish there was 5 of me because there's so many things I want to open. I want to open.
We steal one of you to put it in our police academy, Phyllis. So we're going to need 6 of you.
I would love to. I believe that there's so much that we can do out here, and there's so many opportunities to open up something, to start something. The only process is just do it. Get up, get involved, and just do it. There's days I know you don't feel like it. There's days you don't want to be bothered. But remember, we have a purpose, and a purpose and a plan. And we stick to that.
It is necessary. You know what they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Like one of my facilitators, if they're better in math than the other, then they Zoom the meeting, and the one facilitator that's just top notch in math helps out with the other ones. So everybody brings their own specialty to the table, and that's what makes CARTIF a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different people that have passion for different areas. I am not the one that does everything. I did that in the beginning, but I would expand to every state if I had the money to. I mean, that's an option open. I invite anyone who wants to know how this business started and how it's run and how we have such a successful recidivism rate and employment rate. I'm open to sharing that, because if I keep it down here in Alabama just to myself, then the other 49 states need to know also. Think what kind of world we would live in if everyone had something like this.